starts to hurt. So let's get started. I am Durga Vishwasrao, the member of Enactus, the Management Club of ESI. Welcome you all for the V-Pep talk on the topic, the role of finance in sports. So let's get started with the session with the introduction of a speaker for today. The speaker for today is our beloved BSI EN, Vidit Khetwani. He is currently in FYBFS. He is currently in FYBFS F Division and will be pursuing his majors in banking and finance at Monash University, Australia. After completing his last semester in Vidyalanga, he has gained great exposure in interning with Indian Super League with China, Chennai VNFC 2020 and 2021 as a financial sport intern. Now I would like to request Vidit to start with the session. Thank you.
First when I was deciding about what topic I should speak, because I will be pursuing my higher studies in the field of banking, but I did not want to really bore you guys today. So I decided to speak a little about the role of finance in sports. As according to me, sports is a thing we all Indians connect and can relate at least to 50% of what I am saying today. Even if you have no knowledge about sports, you will be able to understand. So talking about my own experience in this industry, my father has been associated to the sports industry, to the Indian sports industry since a long time now, be it the IPL or the ISL, the Pro Kabaddi League, or even Ultimate Table Tennis. And I was lucky enough to intern in the ISL at Chennai FC in the season 2020 and 21. And my point is that since my childhood, I have got a very transparent point of view of this industry. And as you can see, certain glimpses of my time at Chennai FC. I'd like to play a video just to get your that vibe, what's the atmosphere working for a football club. After hearing about this industry is the glitz and glamour which is associated with it. And I'm not disagreeing, it's quite a glamorous industry. As you can see in this slide, in the first picture you can see Tom Hiddleston and Benedict Cumberbatch watching the 2019 Wimbledon. In the second picture you can see Virat Kohli on the cover of the Forbes magazine in the year 2016, who was listed among the world's most top 100 influential people on this planet. And in the third picture you can see Shah Rukh Khan, who is lifting the IPL trophy in the year 2014 after his team, Kolkata Knight Riders, won the IPL. But what if I told you the reality is slightly different? I'm not denying that there's no glitz and glamour in this industry. But like any other industry, sports organization cannot function without a managing body. And every sports organization cannot survive without considering about its financial threat. Like every company, there is a system which these sporting companies follow. The team which handles the financial performance of the team is known as the commercial team. Okay, so how does a sports franchisee function? Now, as we all live in India, and the most famous league, as we all know, is the Indian Premier League, the IPL. So I'll be using IPL as a tool to explain you all how does a franchisee begin from the scratch. Now the initial bidders who want to own the franchisee will submit their bids to the BCCI, who are at the utmost level of the governance of cricket in India. So now BCCI has to make sure that the new owners are sound financially, of course, and also are law-abiding citizens to avoid any illegal activities further in the tournament. Because as we all know, cricket is a sport which is very much exposed to these illegal activities. Anyways, we won't be getting into that today. But for example, there are two people who want to make the bid to the BCCI. Mr. A, who's a very big industrialist, and Mr. B, who's a very famous actor. So Mr. A's bid to the BCCI was rupees 500 crores INR, and Mr. B's bid was rupees 450 crores. So of course BCCI will go with the higher bid and accept Mr. A's bid. So now Mr. A will pay the franchisee fee to the BCCI, assuming it to be 500 crores INR. It can be less, it can be more in real life. Now Mr. A hires a commercial team to take this newly launched franchisee to greater heights. Now this commercial team will help Mr. A to build a really strong foundation. As they are a new team in the tournament, it should help them to compete with other already renowned franchisees on and off the field. And when I say on the field, of course it refers to the performance in the stadiums. And when I say off the field, every commercial team has to make sure that at the end of the season, every team is also profitable on paper. So there are certain steps which these franchisees take consideration. So the commercial team will now take into consideration how other franchisees have performed in the past. And they will hire a group of people who usually were connected with the league or the sport previously. Now these people who the commercial team hires need to have tremendous statistical knowledge. And of course we live in a world where data is just thriving, and this shows that data can also help these huge companies which are worth in crores win the league. Now this newly hired group of people will help the commercial team, who will tell them about their picks. So what this commercial team does is, before the auction, or usually not even the auction, they only contact the players who fit into their wage budget, because that's the main criteria, that they shouldn't overdraw their wage budget. So in an average season, an IPL team requires around 100 to 125 crores every season just to survive. Considering all kinds of expenditure, right from the player wages, the accommodation expenses, the travel and logistics, the stadium rent, to the technological expenses. Now you guys must be thinking that I'm just talking about the expenses. So how do these teams end up being profitable? So talking about the revenue streams, their most primary revenue stream has been the ticket sales. Because earlier when there was no television, stadiums were there. Like in the 1983 World Cup, the TV was just freshly introduced in India, I guess. And many people just heard that World Cup through radios. But basically ticket sales has been the primary source of revenue right since cricket began. So talking about ticket sales, the IPL is one of the most expensive sports to watch in the stadium, where the ticket ranges right from 2,000 to 10,000 rupees. Now with this ticket sales, the franchisee will try to pay off almost all the expenses incurred throughout the season. And talking about the second revenue stream, these are the streaming rights. Considering that the franchisee has cleared all their dues with the ticket sales, now they will earn a certain amount from the TV rights, a small cut from whatever their match amounted to that day, according to the viewership which they earned. Talking about the third source of revenue are the sponsorships. Okay, talking about the sponsorships, they pay the franchise either in kind or in cash. So every team, as you guys must have seen, every team has these logos of these companies on their jersey. And basically every team sells a certain amount of space on their jerseys to companies who want to be seen on the jersey of the sports franchise. While the match is telecasted, lakhs of people watch that match, and of course the company is getting promoted. Now sponsorships can be of two types. For example, when Kingfisher Airlines was a sound company a few years ago, it was the travel and logistics partner of the entire IPL. So basically the cost of travel wasn't charged by them, but of course they expected that every team had a Kingfisher Airline tag on their jersey. And of course the other alternative is they could pay a huge hefty amount of money in exchange. Now the fourth source of revenue is the sale of merchandise. Now every franchisee has lakhs of fans, and they use it as a tool to make money as well as connect with these fans. Because of course, even you guys must watch sports, of course, some of you at least. So when you wear that jersey, you get this feeling of connecting with your favorite club, right? So that's the point of the company, where they make money and fill their pockets as well as make the fans happy. So further in the presentation, the final outcome, as said earlier in this presentation, the commercial team needs to make sure that the franchisee is successful on the field as well as off the field. Of course, their primary motive should be to achieve the goals which were set before the beginning of the season in terms of performing in the tournament. And the second main goal is they should be a profitable and sound company by the end of every season, otherwise they can go in debt. For example, Barcelona. Now I would like to speak about 3 people who have achieved immense success in the sport financial functioning duties and prospects. First one is Mr. Abhishek Bachchan, who is the owner of the football team Chennai FC and also the kabaddi team Jaipur Pink Panthers. Second one is Mr. Shah Rukh Khan, the owner of the Knight Riders cricket group. Third one is Mr. Toto Wolff, the team principal and stakeholder at Mercedes-AMG Petronas F1. Okay, so talking about Mr. Abhishek Bachchan, as we all know, he's quite an underrated actor. That's a personal opinion. But the other lesser known fact is that he's one of India's biggest sports entrepreneurs. Right from being connected to the Indian Super League, to the Pro Kabaddi League, even being associated in the IPL and other small leagues like Ultimate Table Tennis. So, when I was interning at Mr. Bachchan's club, the one thing I noticed is that he's one of the most intellectual people I have ever come across in my life. And the way he handles his sports franchises is just impeccable. He wouldn't treat his team as he's the owner of the team. He would become the manager of the team and work right at the grassroots levels. He would hang out with these kabaddi players who can't even converse with Mr. Bachchan, but Mr. Bachchan will make sure that he makes these kabaddi players who have come all across from rural India comfortable, and of course his kabaddi team is one of the most successful teams in the league. And talking about his football team, even if there is a pre-season tour, I was an intern there and still I was bored to watch these pre-season games. But being such a big celebrity and an influential man, he took time out of his schedule and flew to whichever state the pre-season tournament was going on. Now I would like to show you all a small clip from Mr. Bachchan's interview.
We're putting together the league, and I just was dying to sign up, and it was something that happened very instinctively. I actually got into the business part of it a lot later. First, it was just a very instinctive decision driven by passion and by what I saw. So that's pretty much how it started, and I still remember the first ever auction that we had for the players. Nobody knew who the players were. We didn't know what they did. There were 8 franchises, and we hired some coaches. We were directed that these are the coaches you can choose from. And I remember just, I was given a list of the coaches that were available, and I literally just said, okay, Balwant Singh, that sounds nice. I'll take him. And he happened to be the Team India coach at that point in time. Didn't end up being our coach because he was in the services, and the services didn't get permission to partake in the first season. And that's how it started. And the auction was like, okay, you choose the team, and we didn't know anything. And it just started off from there.
Okay. So the next person I'm going to be talking about is Mr. Toto Wolff. Does anyone here watch F1 by any chance? F1. So you know who Mr. Toto Wolff is, of course. Yes. Are you a Mercedes fan?
Yes.
Great, good for me. So basically, Mr. Toto Wolff, I'll be talking about Mr. Toto Wolff more here rather than the league. So Mr. Toto Wolff, he's this very tall European 6'4" guy, and his passion was racing, but he couldn't fit into that racing car because of his height. And he had some interest in finance too. So of course he knew that he can't take up racing as his life, and he should just consider it as a hobby. So he studied banking and finance, and then later, after 15 years of working in the banking industry, he started his first investment firm, which was called March 15. There's no psychological thing to it because the date was March 15th, hence he named that company March 15th. And this company, March 15th, he saw an opportunity, a German company who would manufacture engines to the F3 league. Now F3 is the Tier 3 league to the F1. So from there his passion for racing again struck back. So after 2 years, after achieving some success in that German company, he made a lot of money, and then he was offered to buy a very small team in F1, and it was always his dream. Of course he couldn't race himself, but he was very good at banking and finance too. So of course then he started his second investment company 2 years after, called March 16th. Again, no psychological reason, just because the date was March 16th. So he bought stakes, 35% stakes in the small team known as Williams Racing, who is a subsidiary of Mercedes. So basically, now Williams Racing is a very small team, works on a very tight budget, and no one expects success from them. But still, under Mr. Toto Wolff's leadership, that team achieved their first P5. Now P5 is the race ranking which the team achieves at the end of the season. So Williams Racing, a very small team, achieved the 5th position. And of course the whole F1 world was quite surprised at how could they do this on such a small budget. So the owner of Mercedes, at that time Mr. Toto Wolff did not own Mercedes. So the owner of Mercedes AMG called Mr. Toto Wolff because Mercedes wasn't performing that good and they had a gigantic budget. So the former owner of Mercedes asked Mr. Toto Wolff that how did you turn this small franchisee into a P5 winning spot? Then Mr. Toto Wolff told that if you let me run Mercedes for a year or two, and if I bring something to this team, then we can talk further. So he did not buy any stakes before that. He just worked in the management department as a team principal of Mercedes AMG. So basically Mercedes again struck back, came back to their winning ways, and then after a couple of years, the former owner of Mercedes went bankrupt. And he told Mr. Toto Wolff that, I know that you have the money now, so why don't you buy stakes in Mercedes? It's one of the biggest names in the world. So that time, Mr. Toto Wolff, 12 years prior to now, he bought 12% stakes in Mercedes AMG Petronas F1 team. And before that, Mercedes had won, I think, 5 world titles in that particular decade. And right now, until the very last season, Mercedes AMG have won 7 Drivers' Championship and 8 Constructors' Championship. Now I would like to play a small video of Mr. Toto Wolff.
What I try to do is I try to calculate the worst case scenario. And if I can cope with that worst case, I can launch myself into the project. You should never feel comfortable because the moment you think it's easy, you're going to fail. Yeah, I am a half empty glass guy rather than half full. It doesn't make my life much easier. I am in a constant loop of self-judgment, but I think that is just so important that you see yourself in a realistic way. In motor racing, the stopwatch never lies. Whatever we do today, whatever we achieve today is good, and those results will put us in some books. But the truth is, it's just KPIs. Success shouldn't be judged at halftime. The day you retire, you need to judge whether you have been successful or not.
Mr. Shah Rukh Khan. Now, when I said Shah Rukh Khan, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is this aura of success and glory, of course. Again, I'm not being biased. I'm a little bit, a very big fan of this guy, but I won't be that biased. So, there was this interview, an NDTV actor asked Mr. Shah Rukh Khan that, it's been, when KKR was doing really bad, it was I think 4 or 5 years into the IPL, and KKR was being termed as India's most biggest financial sporting disaster, the Kolkata Knight Riders. So the NDTV anchor asked Mr. Shah Rukh Khan that, it's been 20 years, you have been working and been so successful in his respective field. So how do you feel now? Like, what is left for you? And he was very frustrated at that very point of time because you guys remember the MCA incident where there was a certain controversy with Mr. Shah Rukh Khan, and MC had banned him for 5 years. So basically, he told in that interview that he wouldn't smile until his team Kolkata Knight Riders achieves some success in his league and makes the name, because he told that even though he has this great shoulders which are just glorious, but he doesn't want that one tag of failure or feather of failure on his shoulders. And of course later in 2012, in that very season when he misbehaved at the MCF, his team Kolkata Knight Riders won the IPL for the very first time because of some changes in the management and even captaincy. Saurabh Ganguly was replaced by Gautam Gambhir, and later again in the year 2014 KKR won the IPL twice. So a small clip from Mr. Shah Rukh Khan's celebratory clip.
बता दो अभी क्या करने वाले आज आप?
First of all, I'm telling you, it's not sunk in.
Yeah.
We have to sit with the team, chat with them, tell them how much we love them, how hard we've tried for 4 or 5 years. Things have gone wrong. And I want to just say this to everyone, that, you know, when we started this team, Samir, all I thought was that I will teach youngsters how to win. And in the process, I myself, who's been working for so many years and been successful, I learned how to be good, how to be patient, and not believe that everything is going to go right.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't go right, finally, if you wait long enough, inshallah, it will go right. So,
And it's your night today.
yeah, so
Certainly is your
celebrations are
night.
not going to stop. We're going to
Yeah.
go to Bengal after this.
Yeah.
We are going to go to Delhi if they allow me. You know what? I'll go to China. I'll go to America even if they don't allow me inside. I'll go everywhere.
So, now I would like to conclude with this one line, which is not related to anything of finance in sports, okay? It's straight out of my heart. So basically, as you guys know, the Indian Premier League, IPL, is the only festival which is celebrated by the entire India without keeping any kind of religion in mind. And that's the beauty of this industry. Thank you so much guys, and thank you for having me. I would like to thank Mrs. Vidit and also Ronak and the whole PMS department for letting me speak and being the inaugural speaker of this great series, which I hope is continued further. And if anyone would like to ask a question to me, then please.
Don't you think too much capitalism is ruining sports?
What?
Don't you think too much capitalism is ruining sports?
To be honest, capitalism can also be termed in 2 aspects, okay? So I'd like to answer this question in 2 different aspects. Capitalism from the point of business. Now, Imran, you're going to be going to the United States, right?
Yeah.
You watch F1 here. How much do you pay to your cable provider for that 10 sports channel?
I use Hotstar, 700.
Okay, 700 per year.
No, not a year, month. 12, I pay 1200 every month for Jio. I get Hotstar for.
Oh, got it. So basically, as you know, even in F1 or even in UFC, there are these cards which come around £100 each card. Like if anybody watches UFC here, each match card is around £100 in the United States or in the North American region. But due to this very capitalism, it's not extreme capitalism. Abraham. And because if we talk about from the business point of view of capitalism, sports has only become a gigantic organization and a very profitable one too, of course. But when you talk about capitalism from a political point of view, you know what's going on with Chelsea Football Club right now, the Russian sanctions. So I will give everyone a little context to that. There is a football team which functions in the English Premier League, Chelsea Football Club. A very big organization, but it was owned by a Russian, Mr. Roman Abramovich. So basically, he put Chelsea on sale because he knew his assets were getting frozen. So he put Chelsea Football Club on sale for a very minimal price, which was quite surprising. So the selling price of Chelsea Football Club was 2.4 billion, which Mr. Roman wanted. So, but one thing about Mr. Roman was that he loved the club he owned, Chelsea Football Club. So, what the UK government did here. Now this is not complete capitalism, this is a little communism as a political party interferes in this matter, right? So the UK government decided to freeze Chelsea Football Club, and what Mr. Roman had told that he'll donate all the sale proceeds to Ukraine. And right now, the bid which the UK government wants for Chelsea Football Club, because they are the legal owners of Chelsea right now, a government. So their asking price is 5 billion euros. So, and of course there is no proof that that money will be going to Ukraine or not. So this is where you can divide capitalism into two parts. Thank you very much. And any other question? Yeah.
First of all, thank you. My first question is, in what year you were doing the internship?
2021.
Okay, so my question is, what were the contingency plans for the team to earn revenue? Like you said, by the tickets, the first way is the ticket. So
because of the COVID, right?
Yes, because of the COVID.
So basically, as you know, talking about the Indian Super League, the question was regarding ISL. Okay, let's say in Eden Gardens, which is one of the biggest stadiums in India, the capacity is 70,000, right? Now, in IPL, they are already prepared that they are going to earn a huge profit from the sale of those 70,000 tickets every match. But as we know, ISL is not much big of a league, and to be honest, it's a loss-making franchise run. It's doing good now, but of course, in that particular season, ISL hasn't been able to capture that Indian football market quite precisely. So even when there was no restrictions before COVID, you know, in the stadium where Chennai FC played, Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium in Chennai near the Marina Beach, the capacity is 80,000. And any guesses how many people came to watch the game actually? Around 8,000. So that's the thing, they are already prepared to make that loss. And all the revenue is completely based on the streaming rights. And also, that's quite it's not that expensive of a league. So even the owners, it wouldn't be right to say that, but even the owners treat it as a hobby rather than a business. Because of course it is a loss-making business, but it is fun to own a football team, right? So it is for their own hobby, and it is not basically the cost of those streaming rights was 3 times that of what they would have earned in the stadium. So basically, nonetheless, the BCCI covered the cost, and of course the IPL team, because IPL is a very successful, is a very successful league, and players, it affects players from all over the world. You know, these players from the Caribbean islands, I don't think they would have seen this kind of life in their respective countries. Not to insult anyone, but when these players come to India, or even someone from rural India, a very young player who's coming from rural India, and suddenly he's entering this life where he gets to meet Shah Rukh Khan, where he gets to give interviews on television. So it is a very big change, and even during COVID, these streaming rights were going on, and hence of course it must have affected the business a little, but not much, because IPL is such a big deal. But talking about the ISL, which is a little smaller league than the IPL, still much smaller, that would have got affected, but again, that they were prepared for that. And even the cost incurred in the ISL is very less than the IPL. So thank you so much, guys, and thank you for being here, and I hope I did not bore you guys. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Vidit, for such an amazing and informative session. And I guess everyone must have got a little idea how it actually works, because Vidit just explained it very nicely and very perfect now.